Welcome to the Comic Binge. I am your host, Paul Herman. I am joined today with the Spider-Man Council. I'm very, very excited about this episode because we're going to be talking about Miles Morales, Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man comic books, or original Spider-Man comic books, the original Miles Morales Spider-Man comic books. So it's been a while since we've had a genuine episode of the Spider-Man Council. So we've got our people today. We've got a new council member, you could say, but he's no stranger to the Spider-Man world, as you can see. Is that we have Donovan Grant here. Mr. Donovan, how are you doing today, sir?
What's up? How are you guys? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I've been wanting to have you on again we did that awesome episode a while ago where we did Ego, Batman's Ego, and that was fantastic. I thought that was a great episode. Great book, and I knew you from the Crawl Space you used to be on, and the Clone Saga Chronicles with this gentleman over here, and I've been wanting to talk about Spider-Man for a long time, and so I was like, I know you are a big fan of Into the Spider-Verse, and that would be obviously a focus, I think, of this episode, of kind of comparing the comics to the movies we've gotten and are going to get. So you had a tweet that went viral, I believe, right? Like that kind of talk about Into the Spider-Verse. That was rad. I remember that. So yeah, lots of great stuff. I'm really curious your insight, because when this came out, it was for the Spider-Man hardcore faithful, it was not loved. And I don't remember your initial thoughts on it, so save those for later. But we also have Mr. the El Corazon himself, Javi Trujillo. How are you doing, Javi?
Anyone can wear the mask, Paul.
Amen. Amen, brother. Amen. I love that. Well said. Well said. Thank you for joining me. I know you're gonna get in, get out. We'll get you in and get you out, I promise. Adam, pizza time. How we doing?
I'm pretty good. Happy Superman Day, guys.
Oh God, you had to say it. Oh man, yeah, Superman. I love Superman. And last but not least, we have our fellow Spidey dude, Spidey dude, experienced Spidey dude. What's our podcast name? What's it called?
Yeah, the Spidey Dude Experience over on Spidey Dude Radio Network at spidey-dude.com.
There you go. All right. Well, hopefully we'll be on next week. I'm really behind on comics. As you can see, things are happening in the Herman household. So
I specifically scheduled it next week just so that way you didn't have Mando to interrupt us, and B, that you would have an extra week to get the latest issue. So, I did that for you.
The good news is that life finds a way to be chaotic. So life is chaotic.
He's moving, and he has the Kraken in the playoffs. So,
dude, yeah. So, hey, the Stars and the Kraken can play each other in the playoffs. You know that, right?
They could. So anyway, so enough. I got the gavel. The gavel is here, y'all. So we are now in session. Official. So welcome to the Spider-Man Council. In this very, very special episode, we're going to be covering the original Miles Morales comic books, which is Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 2, issues 1 through 14, which I originally was going to do 12. I read 13. And I was like, well, maybe we should do 13. And then Adam was like, we should do 14 as well. I'm like, okay, you're right, after reading 14. So we read the first 14 issues of this. And I got to tell you, again, if you're familiar with the anything with the Comic Binge, we obviously don't spoil things. We want you to please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate for all the people who are joining us. We have 4 people joining us. I'm very appreciative of you 4 people, honestly. And if you're watching this after the stream, go hit the like button, comment, get me in the algorithm. 5 people now. We'll just keep it going. Thank you for joining us. So anyway, we're going to talk about these first 14 issues, and we're just going to talk about just generalities here. And I'm going to go to our guest first, the new council member, you could say. Donovan, you're a big fan of Into the Spider-Verse. We know that. What's your take on these first issues, kind of going into it initially? We'll get into like a breakdown of it later on. But did you read these when these first came out, and did you like them when they first came out?
Yeah, I did. It's funny because, to be completely honest, my memories of the initial Miles stories are really eclipsed by like the online Miles discussion. Like I read them, but I honestly, I remember the origin story of him getting bit by the spider in his uncle's apartment. I remember, him putting on like the red and blue suit and the panel, like, maybe it was his bad taste and stuff. But like the broad strokes, like, the sequence of events, like the fight with Electro and stuff, I really didn't remember, only because I remember when I think about Miles Morales premiering back then, and this is kind of an increasing thing within my own personal history. All I can think back to was the discourse. Like you referenced a tweet that I made a few years ago when Into the Spider-Verse won a Golden Globe, I think. And that's kind of just what I think of. It's not when I think about Miles Morales generally, but when I think about back in like 10 years ago, I just remember, because it was kind of a personal turning point. And Zach was there. I just remember the, I don't know, there seemed to be a really surprising divide amongst, I'd say, comic fans, not so much Spider-Man fans, but just general comic fans. And we can definitely get into it. Reading it now, I mean, solid stuff, I think. I've always enjoyed Brian Michael Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man. I never hated it. It can be criticized, but like I think with this story, I think it put its best foot forward. And I think that like he had a really solid art team that really improved the issues, like David Marquez and stuff. So I overall I thought it was solid. I thought it was solid stuff. I enjoyed it then. I like it more now because of hindsight, and it was a pleasure to read again.
So when you say the discourse of the online stuff, would you say like there was a negative reaction amongst the hardcore Spider-Man faithful? Do you think?
Oh hell yeah! I mean, I just remember. And I've spoken about this before. I've never been shy about recalling this. I've mentioned this on my own podcast. I've mentioned this on just anywhere else. I plan to talk about it again in the fall. I can mention that later on down the line. But like, I remember very much like the death of Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man story, and then that being followed up with like, okay, there's gonna be a new Spider-Man. It's gonna be like a small black kid, and just me reacting to it as like, yeah, okay, because you have like Johnny Blaze and Danny Ketch, you have Peter Parker and Ben Riley, you have Hal Jordan, Kyle Rayner, like successors to the mantle of superheroes. I grew up understanding that to be part of the lingua franca of the comic book of the superhero genre, and I was just very surprised by the like enthusiastic cynicism over it, and it ranged from like kind of sort of like despondent, this won't last. They're kind of they're making him a black kid, so it's going to be this sort of like unserious diversity hire tokenization that's going to go away in a year's time. And that was the most like benign take to like literally people saying they're shoving diversity down our throats, they're replacing all the white people, they're going
Sounds familiar.
He's going to be drawn like Obama. And just like, I just remember like the more that went on, and I was like 20, 21, 22 when it happened. And, I was kind of just like, the more I listened to it, and like, I kind of engaged with it with good faith initially, but the more I listened to it, I was like, this seems damn unhinged. And, it was like the first time that I really kind of experienced in real time what has kind of become regulated in terms of turning geek culture, pop culture into a battleground for a like manufactured culture war, and that was really sort of the beginning of something that just kind of set my mind towards how people perceive media and how they engage with it and how you should think about it when it comes to like things like diversity.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point of bringing up. This was before, obviously the last 3 years where, you had we had Sam Wilson, Captain America, Jane Foster, Thor, and this was almost like the precursor, right? And people back then, I remember thinking, oh, this will never last. This is a gimmick. This is to be honest, I didn't want to think that, but you can't help when and this is not because he's black or anything like that. It's more of just like we've been in comics for too long. It's all it is gimmicks. I mean, this is what we, in the mainstream comic book superhero medium, this is what we have to deal with in general. So, I mean, gimmicks are gimmicks, and whenever there's a gimmick, I always give it a try to. When they appeal to me from from the initial set, I give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, it's a gimmick. Maybe it'll be a decent story and it'll make itself worthwhile, right? You can't predict it all the time. You just you can. It's that whole hope for the best, expect the worst kind of a thing, a little bit. And this is with any gimmick comic book, whether it be something that I end up loving or hating, right? And Miles and that introduction always really interested me, because if you guys remember, and I try to nail this down, and if you guys know, if you're watching, let me know. But I remember the whole genesis of this character existed because of Donald Glover.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because he wanted to, no, but seriously, he wanted to, why can't I try out for Peter Parker? And I remember at the time being like, yeah, like he'd be that's a perfect Peter Parker, because Peter Parker is not like I don't know. To me, he never, and this is back in the day, I remember thinking this. I never thought like he had to be white, and honestly never thought that. I always thought, yeah, Peter Parker could be black, Asian, whatever, right? Like, it's just because he's kind of an outcast, and everyone can identify, I think, as an outcast for the most part.
Well, I don't think Glover himself pitched himself for it like some other actors have done before. I think he had a fan base. I think Community was around the time, and like he had a fan base saying that like he should do it, and he was aware of it. Like he's referenced it in the songs and stuff. But
right.
Yeah, you're right, because Brian Bendis has gone on record saying like that idea led him to like have the idea for Miles.
And
there was also
go ahead.
Prior to that, there was also an issue of Peter Parker Spider-Man written by Paul Jenkins that had a young black boy that was Spider-Man's sidekick, and it was all in his imagination. And at the end of the issue, he unmasks, and it's somebody that looks just like him, and it kind of reinforced that idea that anybody could be wearing the mask. And so I mean, it wasn't without precedent, but you're definitely right on that, Paul, and I definitely remember that as well.
And I remember, but I just remember, Donald he wasn't campaigning for it, but I remember him talking about like, why can't I be Spider-Man? And that's how this whole thing kind of started a little bit, right? So I always thought that was really interesting, and I thought that was a good place to put Miles into this. And truth be told, I never read a single Ultimate Spider-Man comic before this ever, because to me, I always had 616, and I ain't have time for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just the reality. Like, I just don't have time to read more Spider-Man stories that I'd rather just read the 616 stuff. So, Javi, I'm going to throw it to you here. What was your history with Miles Morales? Did you read these comics when they came out? Were you like, I'm not reading it, I'm not into it? Again, I'm not, no judgment here either way. Because listen, again, gimmicks are gimmicks, and I'm not all about gimmicks. They have to have substance. So, but did you read these? Did you like these? Did you hate them? We'll get into our current thoughts here in a second. But what's your history with these comics? You're muted, I think.
He's muted, buddy.
We got you.
So,
we got you back.
2011, when these came out.
2011. Damn.
I know.
I've been going through some stuff, like we all do. I'd been a lifelong, Spider-Man fan since like 1981, right? When I was like 4 years old. And that all stopped. I hate to bring it up, but that all stopped with One More Day.
Yeah.
And that,
you crawl spacers, man.
And even with Ultimate Spider-Man, which I was reading and loved, because at the time that came out in 2000, the main books were not doing so great. And so it was refreshing to get this updated take on Peter Parker, even though he was different than the Peter Parker I grew up with. So flash forward a couple years, and Peter's getting killed off in the main Ultimate book, which I got to give it to the Ultimate line. Like, they had no F's to give.
They had no rules.
They did whatever they wanted. They killed whoever they wanted, and it brought, a sense of excitement. to a degree, but they were also just smashing toys left and right at the same time. So I since I was there for the beginning, I wanted to be there for the end and bought the digital stuff and saw Peter die. And the Bagley art is great. Got, I think, Ultimate Fallout 1 and 4, and I got like the first 2 issues of Miles's book. And it wasn't that I didn't like them, but for personal reasons, just was not really buying a lot of Marvel stuff because I just didn't have money to, and priorities being what they were, and just it didn't feel important to me at that point. And then flash forward a couple of years later, and things were getting better. I wound up, I guess, reading these at the library because I don't have them in necessarily my Comixology, and just checking them out from the library and just like falling in love with the character. And to the point where, like, Jax brought it up on our season of Amazing Spider-Man Classics. Like, this is his Spider-Man. Like, this is what I raised him, because I didn't see the Spider-Man that I grew up with in the 616. And here was a young kid who was dealing with these, issues of power and responsibility and trying to be Spider-Man. And it felt more like a Spider-Man book than what I was getting in the main universe. To where I was even reviewing the second volume of this for the Crawl Space. That was like my first, I think that was like my first steady, reviewing gig for them, was doing volume 2 of this. So
that's right.
He just became, for a good chunk of time, I didn't have my Peter Parker anymore. So I was relying on books like Miles and Spider-Gwen to get that fix, to get those themes, and to see that relatable character. So I have a very deep affection for the character of Miles, and like I said, he's Jack's Spider-Man. So awesome. So it was fun to go back, because I haven't touched these issues in a while. So it was fun to go back and freshen myself up on them. And once I got going, it's like, I went to like 15,
I saw that
16,
by the way.
Yeah. And then, and then I started reading.
Volume.
I read like 5 or 6 of the second volume of Bendis's run, because that goes into his dad's backstory and the Prowler's backstory of what they were really doing when they were kids, and his connections with S.H.I.E.L.D. and everything. So it was a really fun couple of days revisiting these books, and they're so good.
I'm so glad you're saying that. Pizza Time, aka Adam, what is your thought? Did you read these? Were you anti this when it came out? And we'll get we'll save your general thoughts for the reread. But did you read this one that came out, and what were your thoughts if you did?
I didn't really read it when it came out. I remember seeing issue 6 on the rack at a bookstore, and I flipped through it. And I remember seeing panels from issue 7. But I didn't really, I kind of read more the tail end, like the Spider-Man No More story arc, I remember, of this volume. I seem to recall reading that and kind of following a few issues into the next thing, the next volume of it. And that was kind of it. So I hadn't really read this before, honestly. I remember like seeing the announcement on the news and was like, okay.
Right.
But that's I didn't really have strong opinions about it.
Okay. Well, so we'll kind of get into like the story a little bit, and again, we'll try to avoid spoilers. We'll try to just not be super.
Hey!
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we got to you. You thought you had spoken. I
had spoken. I hadn't given my.
All right, you are next. All right, you are next, sir. I apologize.
No, you're good. Because this is an opportunity for me to and I said this on Spidey Experience, but this is an opportunity for me to say it here on the Comic Bench. Miles Morales was my worst comic take that I ever had.
And that's saying quite a lot.
What are you trying to say, Donovan?
He's not wrong.
Donovan knows that I was very dismissive of this volume before it came out. We were at San Diego Comic-Con together when they were trying to hype this up. When this got so overshadowed by the New 52 at that convention, it's a damn shame, because this would have been a much bigger deal, I think, in terms of buzz. I was very dismissive of it. You can go back, you can listen to those episodes of Crawl Space. I thought it wasn't going to last. It was a gimmick. Whenever you made the mention of the old, he's going to be looking like Obama, I remember that I think that was Glenn Beck that made that statement on his talk show. And so it was one of those things where I was so pleasantly surprised to be wrong when I actually got the issues. And what that taught me is don't try not to fall victim to the outrage mob, and don't let yourself become that part of that group, because until I see it on screen or until I read the books themselves, because another one that kind of reinforced this that I did a few years ago, I was at Ollie's and I never read any of the Ms. Marvel Kamala Khan stuff. I was just kind of like, she appeared in Spider-Verse. She was this new character. Didn't understand the hype. Didn't read it. Whatever. And then I saw the hardcover for $7 at Ollie's, and I was like, I mean, hell, that's some comics are $7, so I can get a whole freaking hardcover that covers multiple issues. So I did, and I read it, and I was very, very, very entertained. And so again, I understand that there are purists out there, but a lot of that, especially now, I mean, like Marvel's trailer that just came out, the outrage mob that ensued, and I'm like, dude, this looks like a whole lot of fun. I don't know.
Seriously.
I don't know what people are seeing that to be outraged about it, other than they don't like Brie Larson, whatever. So in regards to this, again, it was my worst take. I completely own it that it was such a bad take, and I've never been happier to be wrong about a take. Because it's such a good book. I mentioned earlier, I read the entire volume.
Wow.
The one thing that, and I had recently started when we first started talking about doing this book for the episode a couple of months ago, I decided to reread the entirety of Ultimate Spider-Man as kind of a lead up to this, and it's very bingeable. It's one of the most bingeable books you could probably read, because it reads so much better that way. It doesn't read well. Bendis does not read well in individual issues, but when you read them in trades or in like a Marvel Comics Unlimited style, it reads really, really well, and you can read a lot of issues in one sitting. So again, I enjoyed it, and I've never been happier to be wrong.
Excellent. Thank you. So I want to kind of move on to kind of just breaking down some of these stories, because the general feeling I'm feeling here is that either we liked it, and as we've reread it, it's even better, or it's as good as you remember it. Am I fair to say that's accurate for everyone here?
Yep.
Tell me if I'm misreading the room there.
Yes.
Everybody, Adam, pizza time. Oh, he's frozen. Is Adam gone? I think Adam's frozen.
He just moved.
There he is. Pizza. Would you say that did you enjoy this as more, if not as much as you read it the first time, or better, or more than you thought you were going to?
Well, I enjoyed it. I'll just say that. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Okay, all right. So you might be, because I'm going to say this right now. When I read this at the time, and Donovan and Zach and Javi, you guys all remember the discourse around like some of the bigger Spider-Man like sites and people out there. A lot of people were putting this down, right? We've talked about a lot about that already. I remember, being
a lot of people still are.
Well, yeah, they're so the minority at this point.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, when this came out, I remember I think I had just started doing podcasting, and I really wanted to. I remember reading this, being like, I love this. This is great. Like, why is this is like, I remember I just loved it. And one of the things as rereading this, and Javi, you brought it up in our little group chat, is I think the biggest problem this series has is the tie-in factors, because the fact that you tie in the whole thing at the very end, like Bendis does a beautiful job of blending those issues. Like these last two issues are the tie-in, and I could give a rat's ass about this
I
series.
completely
But
forgot about that.
Right, me too. And I'm
That's
reading
some
it, I'm like,
wild stuff. The U.S. is in shambles.
I
Country's
I
like
don't even like-
seceded. It's like, wait, what?
yeah.
yeah,
It's
it's
like,
like,
I
what the
don't-
hell?
Right. And I just said, you know what? I turn my brain off and go, I'm focused on this. And
Sure.
I loved in these issues and the whole thing. And I'm going to say this, and I talked about doing a hot take here. And I thought it was going to be a hot take, but now maybe it's not going to be so much as a hot take, but I'm going to say this right now. I think these Spider-Man comics might be some of the best Spider-Man comics made and written in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
I
I'll
go ahead.
add to your point here, going
Please.
back to Divided We Fall.
Mhm.
Like you guys just brought up, like the country is in shambles. Like
Mhm.
Texas is becoming its own country. Washington, D.C. is destroyed. Who knows what's going on in like California? Like they have this map that starts every of those issues. I couldn't care less about the country falling apart. I want to hear about what's going on with this 13-year-old boy and how he's dealing with the weight of what happens in the prior issues and what does that say about him and who he's going to become. Like I'm so invested in his personal story that I couldn't care less that, you know, Steve Rogers has this weird armor suit and has to keep everything together.
Yeah.
He has
Was he
to wear
president
pocket
then?
powers.
Didn't he become
suit.
president?
I think
Yes, he
he
becomes
did.
president at the end.
I think he
Yeah.
did.
Oh
Yeah, he did.
God. The Ultimate Universe is a whole different podcast, but as by itself. But with Miles, I just want to say that when I'm reading these comic books, it is about as fresh, or not fresh. That's not the word I'm looking for. We talk about No Way Home. People, a lot of MCU Spider-Man fans all came around to No Way Home. Donovan, I'm looking at you.
Yes, we did.
And listen, we can disagree on the previous things. That's a whole different podcast, as I like to say. But what I will say, what No Way Home got, and I think Bendis gets here, it's the heart of what makes Spider-Man tick that movie got, and I think it's the Spider-Verse got. Bendis, he nabs completely and embodies it into this little boy. And it very much the thing I reading these comics, and I think it didn't really hit me until I reread this, that it got me thinking about the original Steve Ditko and Stan Lee comics and Romita and all that stuff. The thing that makes Spider-Man such an interesting character is that he is that whole like John Hughes, coming of age kind of story, but it never loses sight of what it is of being a young person, of having like this whole future ahead of you and having the excitement of being young and embracing that, but also like dealing with growing up. It really captures what being a kid is like as a superhero, but even more so of like how it enhances those feelings, right? It's not just like, oh man, it's what it's like to be a hero as a kid. It's like, no. It takes that whole aspect, but it amplifies it. That's what makes it so good. So that's why it makes it even more relatable to me. So it's one of those things where it's just one of those things where I think that Bendis gets the heart of what embodies what we love about, at least for me as Spider-Man, as like the whole responsibility, because he's not like just, a stupid kid, and both Miles and Peter are very different people. They're not just dumb kids walking around like using their powers like, for no good all the time. They have lessons, and Miles learns his lesson differently. And I love that about this comic. I love the dynamic of the Prowler and Uncle Aaron and all of that. I love that dynamic. I remember liking it back then, and I loved Into the Spider-Verse movie, but this whole thing I just loved. And Bendis captures the essence and the soul of what makes Spider-Man, and why, like Javi, you said, why anyone can wear the mask. And that to me embodies it. It's because of sacrifice And I've talked about that with Spider-Man. He knows how to sacrifice. There's guilt and what you do with your guilt, because we all do things that are wrong. And I love how Bendis encapsulates, am I saying that right? Sorry. All of this. Thank you. I can't talk. I don't know why I'm even podcasting. All of that into these 14 issues. And anyone want to piggyback off that? I just want to just get that started, because I thought I was amazing, this whole spirit. Anyone go ahead.
Well, I would say
So
that
if I can jump-
I was reading this again, I was really kind of like pursuing like, okay, what's the theme? Because they say great power, great responsibility, but Miles isn't Peter. He doesn't
Right.
do things
No, not at all.
selfishly. He's not like like this isn't like those, I don't know, I think everybody else old enough to remember this. These aren't like these, like, those bootleg Simpsons t-shirts where like Bart was Jamaican and stuff. Like, he's not that kind of character. Because
I remember those.
because that was a weird pull, but like he he has his own storyline, and in here I really recognize that the big concern with his character that the character has is that, like, when his dad says that some people are good and some people are bad, I did stuff with your Uncle Aaron, he ended up being bad, your Uncle Aaron's a bad guy. Yeah. And then, like, there's a lot of that conflict, and he feels like he did not want to be Spider-Man whatsoever. But then when Peter Parker died, he felt guilty about that. He's like, maybe I could have done something. Maybe I'm supposed to be Spider-Man now that he's gone. And so that really gives him purpose to be like, Peter Parker existed, and okay, I have these powers, and I need to use them responsibly. Miles is like, he comes into a world where there was a Spider-Man. So what does he do? Does he do it? How does he do it the right way? How does he do it the best way? How is his way comport with like the rest of the Marvel universe? And that's a theme that works for Spider-Man, but it's also different enough. And also,
absolutely,
it also works in different contexts. It works in Into the Spider-Verse. It works in the PlayStation 4 / PlayStation 5 Miles Morales Spider-Man game.
I need to play that game.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah, we do.
that helps to really make him a relatable character, not because he's younger and because he's black, but also because he comes into a world where there has been a Spider-Man. So now, what is he going to do? And I think Bendis does that well. I mean, it's not a torture theme, but it is a theme, and it's one that like has its eye on it throughout the entire time. And the best for me, like, my personal bias is that like Spider-Man's less of like a coming of age story and more of like, okay, if you are young, then how do you react when adult responsibilities are heaped upon you?
Yes,
at an alarming rate.
But that's a coming of age story, in my opinion, though. In my opinion,
I mean, Ultimate Spider-Man. No matter how Peter was like 15, like pretty much like 98% of the time, but it never felt juvenile.
Yes,
it never felt like he was like skateboarding along the walls or whatever. It was generally rather like
Andrew Garfield.
Well, it was generally full of pathos. And I think that like he does it
Right.
with Miles, and again, Into the Spider-Verse did that as well, where like it can be
Right.
funny, like it can be embarrassing and stuff, but generally it's like how is he going to react, and that's that pull that makes it like eminently readable.
Yeah, Zach, go ahead.
So for me, rereading these, one of the things that I felt like, especially rereading the previous stuff before this, Bendis was getting long in the tooth in terms of, I think he was running out of things to say, and he became, I'm just adapting stuff from the 616 into Ultimate. And by having this really hard reset across the Ultimate line and taking the step back and reevaluating what it means to be Spider-Man was the shot of adrenaline that desperately was needed. And I think that him and Sarah Pichelli, and somebody that does not get the credit, that needs to get the credit, especially when you look at Sarah Pichelli's work today as opposed to back here, is Justin Ponsor. His inks shine with Pichelli's pencils.
It's very good.
You look at this work with them together, and then you look at with what she's done since by herself, and it doesn't sing the way that these two sang together.
Or even the issue where
whenever
he
Justin-
doesn't anchor. Is it like issue 5 or 6? It's Pichelli's art, but it doesn't look like it because Ponzer's not giving her assists.
you know, it reminds me of how Pat Olive and Al Williamson were on Spider Girl, or Scott Hanna and John Romita Jr. are over the years versus Klaus Janson and John Romita Jr. Ponsor was such a great inker, and if you got a really good inker that can elevate work, it makes a massive difference. You know, or even Ron Friends and Sal Buscema. So you look at this artwork that we're seeing up here on the screen. It's just the panel compositions are great. The way
layouts are fantastic.
The layouts are fantastic. Bendis lets them tell stories between Pacelli, Chris. Is it Sammy? Is that how?
Yeah.
Which I had forgotten he had done the couple issues he did.
Me too.
And then you add Pepe Larraz, whom
David Marquez.
And David Marquez.
Unreal.
Those four guys are great artists. You had a murderer's row of talent on this run that I was like, holy crap. Pepe Larraz, if you have not looked at his Books of X stuff with the Krakoan X-Men stuff, it is phenomenal. I just started reading that because of the Books of X podcast that we launched on the Spidey Network. And I was like, holy crap, who is this Pepe Larraz guy? And then I'm rereading this like literally today. And I'm like, oh shit, here's Pepe Larraz. And just see how much his artwork has evolved over the years, and seeing how he looked with Justin Ponsor was a different element, man. So just a murderer's row of artists added to Bendis, who had an embarrassment of riches pretty much across his entire Ultimate run with Mark Bagley and Stuart Immonen. And LaFontaine wasn't my favorite. He's probably the weakest, in my opinion, of the group. But good grief. I mean, this was a shot in the arm that was desperately needed for Bendis. And I think it prolonged his time on Spider-Man because of it.
All right.
Well, it's funny though that you bring up all the artists, because I mean Pacelli's, co-creator. She did like the first couple of issues, but then she kind of disappears after that, and part of that's because she did Spider-Man, which is pretty important. But Marquez picks up the baton and just runs with it for the rest of this volume, and then he has all of the next volume all to himself before Pacelli comes back when Miles gets thrown into the 616 with some mixed results. I feel, but
interesting. We can talk about that.
Yeah, we can.
But the Bendis, to Zach's point, the Bendis run for Miles has just A-game artists all the way through.
Mm-hmm. Well, it really quickly, the art for this was really surprising to me how good it was. And I remember, and I like Sammy, but Sammy almost feels off, the style is not match exactly what with Pacelli and Marquez. I'm not sure if you guys know what Marquez is doing now, but Marquez is incredible.
He's in DC.
He's incredible. Only good.
That was a huge thing. That was a huge loss for Marvel. He jumped.
Donovan, go ahead.
I think David Marquez did the book Naomi.
Okay.
Which was also created by
Bendis. Yeah, Bendis. Okay, makes sense.
That was Jamal Campbell, wasn't it? Or at least the first volume was.
Oh, yeah,
maybe he did the second one.
No, but still, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, Bendis would want to stick with the guy that he knows. So, Adam, Pizza Time, were you saying something?
Well, I just wanted to say, Somni is such a departure because he's you go from Pacelli and Marquez's realism-ish kind of style to more old school Alex Toth.
It's more of a cartoony
comic book kind of thing. So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, personally, I love Somni, everything he does. I think he's one of the best artists in the game. So I love those two issues.
Right.
But I see, I see what you guys mean, and that it's because the Ultimate Universe, from what I understand, was kind of trying to be a little more grounded, a little more realistic. So they wanted to have those artists that kind of evoke that in their art. Anyway.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And
I mean, it's
we can
all
talk
it's all good stuff. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, and we can talk about a little bit of where Miles is right now and if that's working, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to say mostly the focus on these issues. One of the things I was surprised about is I forgot. I always knew that his dad had an affiliation with like the government or as an agent of Shield sometime, and I thought the cop aspect that they brought into the Spider-Verse was more of like, okay, it's not instead of Shield, it's a cop. I get it. When I reread this, I went, wait a minute,
Yeah.
like they
It's that
combined
guy.
two characters. They combined two
Yeah.
guys together, and I gotta tell you, like
They gave him
Go ahead, Pizza Time.
well, and they gave they switched his and Uncle Aaron's looks kind of in the movie
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, they did.
No, for sure. But I gotta tell you, I prefer Miles' dad in Into the Spider-Verse and this guy
Yes.
opposed to like the guy we have. I do not like the characterization of his father in these comics. That's probably one of my least favorite aspects of the series in retrospect of the movie. Because the movie, I thought I mean, obviously the voice actor, the guy who does the voice, I love his voice. He's a phenomenal actor.
Brian Tyree Henry.
Yeah,
Yep.
he's fantastic. So I mean, like that does obviously help. But that being said, I do think this characterization is like this because this guy is basically Into the Spider-Verse dad. Just
Yep.
is his dad, right? Like I prefer this to this. Anyone, Adam? You sound like you do it. Anyone else prefer this? Any other thoughts on this? This
I
father
think
character?
that because I've seen most of I think all versions of Miles Morales and his family, and the family seems to be different like almost every time. But like two
Yeah.
out of three of them, like his dad's a cop, and Into the Spider-Verse, like compared to the original comic version, he's not as humorless as Into the Spider-Verse. Where here he's like generally like kind of like dour.
He's antagonistic a little bit. It seems
Yeah.
like.
Whereas like there's that great line, and it's like it's not meant to be a gag or funny, but like it's like after Peter dies Into the Spider-Verse, he goes home and like he runs to his mom crying and stuff like that. And he's like, "Dad, do you really hate Spider-Man?" And he's like, "Yeah." And like, it's not like a wacky gag, but it's a character thing where he's like, like,
Right.
"No, I didn't lie to you." And I think that's
God.
just a better rendered character.
Absolutely.
I also think that
Go ahead, Javi.
didn't the video game influence Into the Spider-Verse? Because didn't the video game development?
I think he came out
Wasn't that
afterwards. He came out afterwards.
No, because
Okay.
like the Peter Parker PlayStation 4 game came out the same year as Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
And I know that Into the Spider-Verse, they've been working on that for like 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Javi,
same with the
Go
game.
ahead, Javi.
They had to have been in tandem. But the thing about Miles's dad is he's very much, anti-Spider-Man in the issues that we covered. But like there's a character arc for him that he goes back and forth with on a couple of things. And it's a really interesting journey that he goes on, both in terms of being a father to Miles and just himself and how he, relates to the world.
I also forgotten how.
And with and without Rio, because that's
what I was going to say.
Thank you, Secret War, or not.
Well, again, we'll address the elephant in the room on that. Zach, did you want to add something to that?
Well, I had forgotten how early they killed off his mom in the
I never
in
forgot
the whole
that. I remember
story.
that.
And
I didn't like
they also
that,
killed
to
off
be
Betty
honest.
Brandt, which our buddy Don and I's buddy Josh got inundated with like text messages. I remember with the panel of her dead via Venom. So,
They killed
but
off
yeah,
everybody in the Ultimate Comics.
it was one of those things where because I read the whole volume, I was like, oh yeah, she dies in this first volume. I thought it was in the second volume, but no, she dies in the first. And then Secret Wars obviously resets everything. But man, I'll also say this. To me, this version of Miles, in my opinion, works better than what we've seen most of the time in the 616, because he is truly a legacy character here. And he gets to interact with Peter Parker's world, but
Mm.
doesn't have to interact with Peter Parker.
Mhm.
And I think that was something that is an element that makes Miles' story a lot more unique, him being that legacy character. The problem is that for some people, him not being in the 616 was a detriment, but in my opinion, it was an asset, because Peter Parker is not around and he gets to honor the legacy without being directly related to Peter. It was just like Peter's world. Miles has an accident just as much as Peter does, and it adds that little bit of fated destiny that you don't have to be related to Peter Parker to carry on Peter Parker's legacy. And also, characters like Jonah in this volume are incredibly layered, and you just don't get that layered version of Jonah in the 616. And I love Jonah in the 616, but reading Ultimate Jonah here, it's like, man, he's so good, so good. And
I'm just going to interrupt here for a second. I want to say that the Ultimate Universe serves a purpose, and I do think the problem is and obviously Bendis kind of realized that after he did 100 issues of the series, of like you're getting to the weeds of you're essentially the same thing as the 616. The whole point of the Ultimate Universe was a jumping on point for new readers to grasp onto their own character of Spider-Man.
Which this is a perfect jumping on point, by the way.
Good. Oh yeah,
this
is
this is great for new readers. Like,
yeah, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just said.
Oh, sorry. So I think the problem is that you can, because of his popularity started to grow over the years, and they realized, oh, this Miles character is not just going to be gone in a year. He actually has some like valid like staying power as a legitimate character. What do we do with them? I mean, it's only natural to bring him with Spider-Man. And I think I do think there's room for, in my opinion, for Miles to be in the 616 universe, and there always will be. The problem was the execution of it with Secret Wars 3 or whatever you want to call it. Obviously was not good. I do think that there should have been and here's what I do think. Because we don't really know how it all works. I tried to do some light research a while ago. Like, how did Miles get into this universe? He just kind of shows up.
I saw that recently on Twitter, that like it was like some sort of gift by some cosmic character, but like
it was Molecule Man.
Yeah,
because he gave him a hamburger.
When they did like the relaunch, like Miles is like, well, what would Spider-Man say? And there's like a flashback to him meeting Peter, and it's like, well, that sucks. Like, I think the best version of, because I like the idea of, because I think Peter Parker's the one of the best characters to have a Miles Morales kind of character to kind of get into his world, because he'll concern himself with is like, how do I have this kid not make the same mistakes I did, and I feel I relate just to him too much, and I feel that the best version of that is the video game.
Yeah,
where like if you play the Miles game, it starts off and they're like Batman and Robin across the city, so Miles knows what to do, and that to me just feels in character. Like, whereas in the 616 we have to like pretend that it makes sense that Peter wouldn't like check up on him. It's like, come on. I mean, I'm not saying that he has to adopt him exactly, but like
I am. Let's adopt him. Let's do it.
The whole responsibility. It's like, I know you want to separate franchises, but like, if you cannot have your cake and eat it too.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that the thing is, there is a power to having them together, and I do think they can coexist, and they are coexisting. But I do think there is a potential story here for the 616 universe story of Miles, of their meeting. That needs to be told, and there is a good story there. I think they just got to figure that out. And honestly, at this point, because it's been so long, don't rush it. Let's wait. Let's actually tell a legitimate, make it an event, if you will. Like, how did Spider-Man and Miles meet up? Javi, I'm gonna throw it to you. Are you caught up with Miles at all? Are you?
I have not. I haven't read any of the Ziegler volume. and I'm like 1 or 2 issues shy of the Ahmed volume concluding. We were supposed to get answers of what happened in the transition between
right
whatever Ultimate Spider-Man Miles Morales was and Ultimate End to Spider-Man. They even promised it in the letters pages that answers were coming. And like, what does everyone remember? Like, because all of a sudden certain characters were dead and now they're alive. And like, how does everyone relate? And they just kept on trucking and it never came. And that kind of left a weird taste in my mouth. I don't know why.
The problem that I think occurs is you have a Marvel who doesn't have the reverence for establishing a cohesive continuity. They just want to tell good stories. And I think it's a systemic problem at Marvel at times where you're just jumping from story to story, and whether or not the stories make sense for the characters doesn't matter as long as you're just, tell the good stories. And I think that that's what we kind of saw with Miles here, because we should have gotten those answers a long time ago. I think Ziegler's going to address some of that, I think, in his volume, just based off of the couple issues that I've read so far.
Javi, go ahead.
I think Bendis just kind of ran out of gas when they jumped over to the new universe. And it just, something fell a little flat when we got there.
He'd been doing it for so long, right?
I mean, and and like Miles like starts off the new volume fighting Blackheart, and just I don't know, something was missing, and it kind of came back in the new volume for a little bit, and then I don't know, it just felt like it lost its way again a little bit. I don't know if anyone else was keeping up with Satellites.
Well,
Ahmed was very cold for me. I wasn't a huge fan of a lot of his work on Miles, just because it just didn't connect with me the way the others stuff had.
Yeah. Donovan, are you reading any Miles stuff? What's your take on what's your update on this?
Well, I didn't really have any transitory issues. I don't remember any transitory issues that I had when Miles was in the 616. I mean, I didn't like how they kind of like yada 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 how he met Peter, but I remember, and I wrote about this, and I am writing about this. There's like an issue 2, like there's a whole his costume's ripped, and there's there's like this YouTube blogger like Spider-Man's a black kid. I feel so seen kind of thing. Yeah. And he was like, this feels kind of weird. And Bendis got heat for that because he's a white writer speaking about, the personal like response and beliefs of a black kid, which led to some very genuinely thought-provoking discourse. So I thought that like there was still, interest left in the tank where he was concerned. This the Ahmed stuff, I had like whiplash, because all of a sudden like it seems that like Miles and Ganke are like 16, 17 years old. It's like, where did that happen? And I feel that like and it just objectively speaking, Marvel is has loudly been about trying to keep Spider-Man young. When you have the teenage Spider-Man, and all of a sudden he's like visibly in high school. Like Ganke has like a soul patch and stuff like that. I was like, wait, is there a time skip? Did I miss something? And the dialogue I didn't always love. I think that like, I mean, say what you will about Bendis, but these characters felt like they had like a lived-in.
Yeah.
And I think that like Ahmed, it was a little too much. Like, I don't know, him listening to podcasts, kind of like he's writing it down. I mean, it wasn't all bad. I mean, I read it all the way through.
Kids, they like to say lit, and they like to say same. Okay, got it. I can move on and write my high school story now.
Yeah, I read the Clone Saga, and that was all right, but like it was a little too. I mean, what I did like was him and Kamala. Like, there's that one issue where it's like kind of him and Kamala on like a not date, and I thought that was really cute. But I did think that like it was a run in search of a strong tone. I mean, it had its own vibe, but it wasn't a vibe that I thought was like mega successful. And I too have not read the Ziegler stuff, not out of like exhaust and tolerance or anything. Just I've not gotten around to it yet.
Ziegler's.
Sorry, I was going to say really quick. I want to add a mod thing. I'll let you go, and we'll kind of wrap it up here in a few minutes. A mod I gave a shot. It wasn't terrible at first, and it is kind of meandered. And I did not like Ganke like his characterization. And then it got like just too into the weeds, and I'm like, all right, I'm out. And but I will say, the ideas were there, but the execution of like this, like again, making his mom have another baby. I'm like, what? Like it's like low hanging fruit, man. Like what? Like, well, I better give Miles a sister, and it's just like, well, give me a reason. Like, like it's like it feels so like just I don't know. I did not like the way it flowed, and I gave it up. I've read only one issue of Ziegler's, which is the first issue. I loved it, and I've been meaning to get back to it, but life's been chaos, so I have not been there. Maybe we'll do it here soon. Zach, I'm gonna let you go, and then Adam will let you go, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, I'm gonna go put my dog out real quick. I'll be right back. But go ahead and speak your mind.
Ziegler's stuff, I feel like, just based on some of the stuff that's going on with it from the 2 issues I read, feels like it's going to kind of sort of address the elephant in the room that Miles is, wasn't from this world originally of the 616, and I feel like that may be setting up for the ultimate revival thing that they got going on later on this year. So it'll be interesting to see how they incorporate Miles with that, because I think that's a Miles-driven event. I just, but for the most part, I have enjoyed elements of the Peter Parker Miles Morales relationship in the 616. But I concur with Don, having a couple of months ago just played, because I was waiting to get a PS5 to do Miles Morales on the PS5, but I finally just broke down. I was like, I just need to play it, and I finally played it and did it through and got to 100%, and really really enjoyed it, and makes me it whets my appetite for Spider-Man 2 PS4 or PS5 later on this year. That I will be getting a PS5 specifically just for that game. I already know.
Yeah.
Because I already have a 4K TV. That was part of the reasons I was waiting. Is I was going to get a 4K TV. I have a 4K TV now, so I am raring to go. Not only to play the remastered version of Miles, or the PS5 version of Miles, but I'll play the remastered version of the first game. Though I'm still getting used to that new Peter Parker face scan.
Oh.
Stella hates that, as do I.
God.
All
Yeah.
right, so Adam, are you reading any Miles books, and then we'll wrap up here in a few minutes.
No, I'm not reading Miles right now, but before we wrap up, I have something I want to mention because I'm going to mention it. And with the parents, and so I have a question for everyone. What are Miles's parents' names?
I was hoping to get to this.
Jeff and Rio.
Yes. When do we learn that in these first 14 issues?
Issue 15.
Basically, his parents are never referenced by their actual names in the issues that we cover. A kid writes
even his
into the
dad?
letters. No, it's just Uncle
Wow.
Aaron and Gonke and yeah. A kid writes a letter with a few questions that they want Ben to answer. And the first one is, what are his parents' names? So we find out the names of his parents in the letters page of issue 8. And there are two opportunities where, I mean, it's in the first issue. They're walking to the the raffle, and there's perfect opportunity. Hey Jefferson, like, no, they don't call each other. And issue 7, they have a conversation at the dinner table, and they don't call each other by their names, so we don't know his parents' names for the whole year, the first year of this series.
So letter writer wrote in, "What's his dad's name?" and Bendis said Jefferson Davis.
No. He said a letter, like he wrote, like it was like 5 questions for Bendis to answer, and the first one was, what are his parents' names? And Bendis says Jefferson and Rio. He doesn't mention the last name.
And I remember too, they were supposed to go more into the backstory of why his parents didn't have, why Miles is Miles Morales instead of Miles Davis. And and all
Yeah.
that. I don't think they ever really gave an answer.
We needed Untold Tales of Miles Morales, apparently.
Anyway, I just thought he dropped the ball there when, if you go back to Amazing Fantasy 15, second page, first two panels, you have Uncle Ben and Aunt May. So
Uncle Bane.
Uncle
like
Uncle
Bane's
Bay,
there.
Uncle Bay
He's
and Aunt
all
Men.
Sorry.
Ant-Man.
And so
Oh, boy.
I guess as we wrap up here, we'll get some parting thoughts. I guess I'll kind of start here first. I'm just gonna say, I've said it before, I'm gonna say it again. I think these are some of the best Spider-Man comics maybe ever written, and I say ever meaning the top like 20 potentially. I really do. I'm not sure if it's top 10 because there's a lot of amazing, no pun intended, Spider-Man stories that are, I think, comic books that are in there. I don't include movies because the comic medium is its own thing, right? So, but I think that this is definitely in the top 20. I don't think you could not. It could be the top 10, but I have to like really think about it. But definitely a top 20, 100%.
Maybe we do a top 10 on Spidey Experience one night when we don't got anything going on all week.
Oh God, that'll take me not hours. It'll take me like years. It'll take me years to figure that one out. But I'll be down one day. So yeah, there you go. Yeah. Hey, listen, your personal favorite top 10 are different than you think the greatest all-time Spider-Man top 10, because I'm sure there's things that I think that are some things that I think that are some of the best ever may not be what I would consider the best ever, but my personal favorite. So there's a difference, right? So
right.
So anyway, great show today, guys. I've had a blast with you all. Javi, if you need to head out, I'll go to you first. Javi, your final thoughts on Miles, kind of, just wrap up your general feelings of these comic books here.
It's like I said earlier, it was something I was a little late to the party with, but became something I really loved, and I still think that these hold up remarkably well because it held up so well that it translated so effortlessly to a movie. And it's funny too to compare and contrast these with the original Ultimate Spider-Mans, because Bendis does kind of follow a similar arc in as much as with the Ultimate comics, we spend a lot of time building up Peter Parker before he actually acts as Spider-Man. And similarly here, like Miles doesn't get his own costume till issue 5, which in the Ultimate run, Uncle Ben dies in issue 5. Spoilers. Uncle Ben dies.
Oh my God.
But there's a lot of stuff like that where even where Peter first realizes he can walk on walls and hang from the ceilings. Bendis revisits that scene and Miles has a completely opposite reaction. But it's a great look at a character who can be Spider-Man in a different way, but still have all the attributes of a Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, there's something about seeing this kid who really looks like a kid. It was like when Peter, got launched. Well, they talk about it all the time that he's in high school and he doesn't look like, when he's Spider-Man, he doesn't look like a kid. No one really mentions him being a kid, but like Miles, it's glaringly obvious, and it adds a layer of fun, but it also heightens the tension, because you feel the inexperience with Miles at the beginning more so than you did with Peter. But end of the day, like he's Spider-Man. Like there's nothing else about it. Like this is his responsibility, and it's got all the dynamics that you would want to see from the character, where he's trying to balance his dual life and he's smart and funny when he needs to be. And I'm really glad that we got to go through these again, because I had a ball rereading them.
And the follow-up on what you said here really quickly, one of my favorite aspects were those two issues, the last issues of the stupid tie-in series, because the moment when Aunt May gives Miles the web shooters, oh my God, that was what a moment, man. Like that. I mean, and again, you can say it's spoilery, but whatever. I thought this was a beautiful moment for the character. And I, people rip on Bendis unfairly. I've always loved Bendis a lot. I think his Superman stuff wasn't bad when I read it. I just can't really, I just not as much of a DC guy than I am a Marvel guy. This is a Marvel zombie through and through. But here's the thing, man. Like, I gotta tell you, when you write things like this, what Aunt May says right here, what would Miles, don't think about what Miles Morales would do, or what Peter Parker would do. Think about what would Miles do, and I'm like, damn, like that's some good goddamn writing. I'm sorry. Like, I know people would be like, oh, better is terrible, blah, 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 better, he got right. And I'm just like, you know what, yo, like there's some great stuff that he's written in that moment right there. I'm like, he's a goddamn good writer. So I just want to say that real quick.
Bendis did really great Ultimate Aunt May stuff. He really pushed her forward as a character.
Yes. She's my I'm not a huge fan of 616 Aunt May at times, but it's Ultimate Aunt May,
that's our friend. That's our other friend, Javi. You know who that is.
Yeah,
you know who that is.
I do.
You know who you are. You can't hide from us, Pete. We know who you are. We know where you live. All right.
Pete.
Anyway, all right. We'll tell you later. Okay. All right. So, Javi, where can people find you and your awesome new ventures?
You can find me at Javi True on Twitter. The Bond is Not Enough on Instagram. I've got comic reviews for Catwoman, Batman: The Adventures Continue, Gotham City Year One over on BatmanOnFilm.com. 007, I am reviewing that for the JamesBondDossier.com. And I just launched a new YouTube channel called The Flash, Up to Speed with Wally West, where I am starting at the beginning of Wally's time as the Flash and just taking each issue by issue for every episode, and then throwing in other Flash stuff too. Like, I just reviewed a Barry Allen statue for Eric Trollsman. That's up there already on YouTube, and I should have the next episode out. Trollsman! So, and then in addition to that, if you go to the Spidey Dude Radio Network, my son and I took over from Don and Josh and John, Amazing Spider-Man Classics, where we are starting over at the beginning and getting his high schooler perspective on the Amazing Spider-Man. And recently, if you go over to the Spidey Dude Radio Network YouTube channel, I've got a couple shorts for action figures like MTV Spider-Man, Kit Bash. I did a Black Cat and MJ, Spider-Man hot toy review, and Jack and I give our thoughts on the Into the Spider-Verse trailer that also has a Marvel style cameo from Zach. So,
it does.
Yeah.
A picture that Donovan took, actually.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. I've got a jet tonight, but it's always fun being on the Spider-Man Council, and it's always fun talking with Don. It's been way too long since I've physically spoken to him and not just like Twitter or Facebook or anything. So,
well,
happy early birthday, man.
Thank you.
Corazon is headed off, sir. We will see you soon. Have a good night.
You guys have a good night.
All right.
Take care.
Night, sir. Javi's a good sport as always. Love that guy. We don't call him the El Corazon for nothing. That's all I got to say. All right.
The El Corazon.
The El Corazon. All right. So as we wrap up here, Zach, where can people find you? All right. You already said your piece. Sorry. Moving on. Just kidding. Sorry. I do that to you.
Buddy.
I know. Just go, bro. Let's go.
So you can find me over at spidey-dude.com, home of the Spidey Dude Radio Network, where we have Clone Saga Chronicles, which co-starred with Donovan and myself and Josh. That was the show that started it all. You have Spectacular Radio, the show about the Spectacular Spider-Man animated series that ran from 2008 to 2009. You got Voices from the Area, prequel/sequel to that show, where you got Greg Bashansky, Greg Wiseman, and Jennifer L. Anderson going through and talking about Gargoyles, the series that ran in the mid-90s. Jennifer L. Anderson.
Oh, I thought it was Jennifer Aniston. I'm like, Aniston was a Gargoyles fan? Nice.
No.
So she's not just a pretty face. I see. But it's not Jennifer Aniston. My fault.
No. Jennifer L. Anderson. And you can find the video version of that over on our Patreon. We also got the Saw Buscema Era podcast. Latest episode dropped yesterday, which covers the Saw Buscema's seminal run on Spectacular Spider-Man, starting from the death of Gene DeWolf all the way up until the Clone Saga. Then you've got Make Mine Mayday, the show all about Spider-Girl and her world. We will be broadcasting on our YouTube page on Friday. We're going to be wrapping up the Spectacular Spider-Girl digital comics. And then we've got basically 5 more issues of the Tom DeFalco Ron Friends run, and then the Dark Ages begin. And then, of course, the Spidey Experience, where we cover everything Spidey related over on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/SpideyDude Radio Network. We have Mr. P Thug and Mr. Adam that are regular panelists on there. And we just launched our newest show, Books of X, a Krakoan X-Men podcast with myself and Neil Bogenreiter talking about the Krakoan era of X-Men from the beginning.
Oh my goodness. That is
at Spidey Radio.
That's a lot. All right, Adam, where can we find you at, sir?
Legs on Twitter, and I'm also, like Zach said, I'm on the Spidey Dude Experience on the Spidey Dude Radio Network on YouTube and the website and Spotify and Apple, etc. Yeah.
All right. And Donovan, I don't know. I'm ashamed to say this. Are you doing a podcast? I don't know if you are or aren't. I apologize. What are you doing now, sir?
Oh yeah. My podcast, I've been doing it like for 7 years now. My main podcast is Questions We Don't Have Answers. I co-host it with Harrison Shoot. We have guests on the show every now and then, but generally it's myself and Harry. And so it's the gimmick of it is that, like, it's generally a socio-political podcast. We get very political on it.
Okay.
We're very opinionated. So we tend to talk a lot about like media and pop culture and politics. But and it's not really stated in, like, the tagline, but I'm a comics fan. He's a sci-fi fan. So oftentimes we'll examine that media through those lenses, or just kind of examine the media, period.
Sure.
And I'll mention this, that like when was this, back in October, I did a write-up on the Spider-Man movies because I was a guest on another show, Earth2.net, in which I ranked the Spider-Man films, or as part of a ranking podcast. And I kind of wrote an expanded piece about that, sort of explaining my thought process a little bit more in depth, without the scuttle of other people on the panel. And if you want to check that out, go on kinowaiters.com and just type in Spider-Man. You can find that, as I enjoyed writing about that. So that's my main podcast, outlet. I do some work for DC Comics on the website. I do just content, contributions. Type in my name and you'll see some of the latest work I've done for this year. I still, after all these years, I'm part of the BatmanUniverse.net. I review the Nightwing comic monthly. Matter of fact, I should write that next review right now because the latest issue dropped today. I will be doing work on another outlet that's coming up soon. I just don't have anything published as of yet, but the work's already started. So let's be on the lookout for my stuff, and you can follow me on Twitter at DonoDMG1.
Right on, man. And by the way, I didn't know. Yes, sir.
Sorry, Don, you're going to that Bowling Green University thing, right? Later on this year.
Yeah. Paul, are you aware about that? The Spider-Man conference in September.
No. Spider-Man Council was not invited.
In September 29th and 30th, Bowling Green State University, their pop culture conference, are having a 2-day conference on Spider-Man. In 2019, they did it for Batman for his 80th anniversary, and they're doing it this year for Spider-Man's 60th anniversary, even though that was last year. But yeah, I'm going there. I'll be doing a presentation on Spider-Man fandom. Josh will be there. He'll be doing one on Spider-Man as love interest, with Betty Brant, all that kind of stuff. And
very fitting.
I believe that if you're interested, I would check out BGSU, and I know the deadline for the abstracts has been extended to May. So if you're interested, kind of, go down there and present a topic on Spider-Man, I would recommend it because I really had a fun time doing it in 2019 for Batman. Yeah, I will be down there in Bowling Green State University, Ohio, presenting about Spider-Man fandom in September.
So
That'd be
thanks
cool.
to Southwest, Donovan, I think I'm going to be able to swing it.
I hope
Cool.
so. It'll be a lot of fun.
Right on. Right on.
So I wanted you to mention that at the end of this. So
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll look into it. I love doing like speeches, obviously, because I can't shut up about anything. But you are watching this. If you're watching this far, thank you very much. Hit like button, and also be please subscribe. It makes spider sense, y'all. That's all I gotta say. So, and if you guys recognize this, then you guys are all OGs all the way. So, yeah, go subscribe to the Comic Binge. Like the video. Follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow me personally on Twitter. I'm at Herman22 with 2 N's, aka P Thug. Remember that thing's right there. And I talk about comic books, sports, and all Star Wars a lot. Those are my 3 main things. And I post pictures of my family a lot too. So that's always fun. So anyway, thank you so much for who have already subscribed, watched videos, liked. I really appreciate all of you, seriously. And Donovan, thank you so much for coming on the show. Obviously have you back for another council meeting at some point. So if you're open for it, I'll have you back on again, sir.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. Appreciate it.
Excellent. No, exactly. It's been awesome. And again, really quickly, someone just want to say hello. Hello, Walter. Hello.
what's up, Walter?
So yeah, I appreciate you, brother. All right. Chris isn't here, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it.